Hello listener, if you're hearing this, you probably take subways for granted. Step on a train, ride to your destination. Never think about the hundreds of miles of tunnels beneath your feet. The darkness down there, the creatures that live in it, the people who maintain it. If you're new here, subscribe and comment where you're listening from. This story is about spending 165 days in that darkness. About living in the subway tunnels during the zombie apocalypse. About learning that the underground isn't an escape, it's a prison. A labyrinth. A tomb that stretches for 250 miles beneath one of the largest cities in the world. About discovering what happens to a human being when they spend half a year in complete darkness. Hunting rats for food, drinking contaminated water, slowly losing their mind while the infected hunt above and sometimes below. About becoming something that isn't quite human anymore. My name is David Chen, and before the world caught fire and died screaming, I was a track worker for the New York Metropolitan Transportation Authority. The MTA. I maintained the subway system. Specifically, I worked the overnight shift on the oldest lines in the system. The IRT lines that were built in 1904. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 trains. Lines that snick through Manhattan from Harlem to the financial district, diving as deep as 180 feet below street level in some sections, running through tunnels that are over 120 years old. People don't understand the subway. They think it's just trains and platforms. But beneath those platforms is an entire world. A three-dimensional maze of tunnels, active lines, abandoned lines, maintenance passages, ventilation shafts, emergency exits, water mains, power conduits, communication cables. There are sections down there that haven't been accessed in decades. Abandoned stations sealed off after renovations. Service tunnels that don't appear on any public map. Dead-end passages that lead nowhere. It's a labyrinth in the truest sense of the word, and I knew it better than most. I'd been working for the MTA for 11 years when the outbreak started. Started at age 23 as a cleaner, the lowest position in transit. Worked my way up. Station cleaner, then platform cleaner, then track cleaner, then maintenance assistant. Finally, it took me 8 years to make track worker. That's the position where you actually maintain the infrastructure. The rails, the ties, the signals, the third rail, the drainage systems, the tunnel walls. You work overnight when the trains stop running. You work in teams of 3 or 4. You work in complete darkness except for your flashlight and the emergency lighting systems. You work surrounded by rats, millions of them living in the tunnels. You work with the constant threat of electrocution from the third rail. 600 volts of DC current that will kill you instantly if you touch it while grounded. You work knowing that one mistake, stepping into the path of a maintenance train, touching the wrong wire, falling onto the tracks means death. It paid $75,000 a year with benefits. Good money for what it was, but the job destroyed people. The darkness, the danger, the isolation, the rats, the smell. The constant awareness that you're working 100 feet underground with millions of tons of city pressing down above you. It got to people. The turnover rate was high. Most people lasted less than 2 years before quitting, finding office jobs, anything that didn't involve spending 8 hours a night in pitch black tunnels. But I lasted 11 years. I liked it, liked the darkness, liked the solitude, liked knowing the secret geography of the city that existed beneath everyone's feet, liked the pure physicality of the work. Liked that it was just me and my crew and the tunnels and the work. No office politics, no customers, no bullshit. Just maintain the infrastructure, keep the trains running, keep the city moving. I knew the tunnels intimately, knew which sections flooded during heavy rain, knew where the rat colonies nested, knew where the homeless sometimes camped in winter, knew which abandoned stations still had working electricity, knew where all the emergency exits were. Knew how to navigate in complete darkness using just touch and sound and spatial memory. I'd spent thousands of hours down there. The tunnels were my workplace, my expertise, my domain. That knowledge would save my life during the outbreak and trap me in a nightmare that would last 165 days. Strip away my humanity, turn me into something else, something that belonged in darkness. The outbreak reached New York City on May 8, 2024, a Thursday. I was working the overnight shift, 2,300 hours, 20700 hours, doing routine track inspection on the southbound 4/5 express line between Grand Central 42nd Street and Union Square 14th Street. This was one of the oldest sections of the system. Deep tunnels, narrow, built using cut and cover method in 1904. The walls were original brick and tile, over a century old, seeping water constantly, covered in layers of grime and soot and decades of accumulated filth. The air down here was thick, stale, heavy with moisture and the smell of decay. Perfect breeding ground for mold, fungus, and rats. My crew that night was small, just 3 of us. Me, my supervisor James Rodriguez, 15 years with MTA, knew the system better than almost anyone, and Maria Santos, a newer track worker who'd only been with us for 6 months but was learning fast. We'd started our shift at 2300, done the safety briefing, collected our equipment, tools, safety harnesses, communication, radios, and descended into the tunnel system through the track worker entrance at Grand Central. By 0200 hours, we were 2 miles into the tunnel, walking the tracks, checking for defects, loose bolts, drainage problems, signal malfunctions, routine maintenance that kept the system functioning. It was hot down there, always hot. Summer heat from the surface soaked into the concrete and brick, combined with heat from the trains, from the electricity running through the third rail. The tunnels held heat like ovens. We were sweating constantly even though we moved slowly, methodically, checking every meter of track. The radio crackled at 0213 hours dispatch, but the voice sounded wrong, stressed, urgent. All crews, all crews. Emergency recall to nearest station. Repeat, emergency recall. Do not use standard protocols. This is priority alpha evacuation. Acknowledge. James keyed his radio. Track worker team 7 acknowledging. What's the nature of the emergency? We're 2 miles from nearest station. Priority alpha evacuation. Details when you reach the station. Move now. That was wrong. Very wrong. Priority alpha meant immediate threat to personnel. We'd had priority recalls before track fires, power failures, water main breaks, but never priority alpha. That was reserved for catastrophic emergencies, terrorist attacks, major structural collapses. Something bad is happening, James said. His voice was calm, but his eyes showed concern. 15 years of experience told him this was serious. We need to move fast. We started jogging back toward 42nd Street. Track workers don't run in tunnels, too dangerous, too many trip hazards, too easy to fall onto the third rail, but we moved as quickly as safely possible. Flashlights sweeping the darkness ahead, watching for obstacles, listening for trains even though the system should have been shut down. We'd covered maybe half a mile when we heard the screaming, not from our radios, from ahead of us, in the tunnel, humans screaming, terror, pain, multiple voices. We stopped. James held up his hand, cut lights, silent. We turned off our flashlights, stood in complete darkness, only the dim emergency lights every 100 feet, providing minimal illumination. Our eyes adjusted slowly. In the darkness, we could see movement ahead, shapes, people on the tracks, running toward us, and behind them, chasing them, other shapes, moving differently, faster, more aggressive. What the hell is that? Maria whispered. We watched. The runners were civilian clothes. People who'd fled into the tunnels, probably through an emergency exit or down from a platform. They were panicked, stumbling in the darkness, and the things chasing them, they moved wrong. Too fast, too direct, predatory. One of the runners fell. The pursuers were on them immediately. We heard sounds I'll never forget. Tearing, screaming that cut off suddenly. Wet sounds. Into the alcove, James ordered. Now, every few 100 feet, the tunnel walls have recessed spaces, emergency refuges where track workers can press themselves when a train approaches. They're maybe 3 feet deep, 2 feet wide, just enough to get out of the way. We pressed into one now, turned off every light, controlled our breathing, waited. The chase passed us. Maybe a dozen runners fleeing, maybe 20 pursuers. They ran past our alcove without noticing us, disappeared into the tunnel heading south. The sounds faded, then stopped. We waited 10 more minutes, silent, listening. Finally, James spoke quietly. That wasn't human. The way they moved, the sounds they made, those were infected. Infected with what? Maria asked. Don't know, don't care. But whatever happened on the surface, it's in the tunnels now. We can't go back to 42nd Street. They came from that direction. Union Square then, I said. South too far, and we don't know if it's clear. Could be the same situation. Then what do we do? James thought. 15 years of tunnel experience running scenarios in his head. The old City Hall station. The abandoned one. It's sealed, but I know the maintenance access. We get in there, seal ourselves in, wait for this to pass, wait for MTA to secure the system. Then we emerge. That station's been closed since 1945, Maria said. It's not even on the active system anymore. Exactly. Which means the infected won't know it's there, won't find us. We hide there until this blows over. It seemed reasonable at the time. Shelter in place, in a sealed station. Wait for the professionals, police, National Guard, whoever to handle the situation above. A few hours, maybe a day, then back to normal. We had no idea how wrong we were. No idea that normal was gone forever. No idea that we were about to spend 165 days underground. No idea that the New York City subway system would become our prison, our hunting ground, our tomb. James led us through a maintenance passage I'd only heard about but never seen. A connection between the active 4/5 line and the abandoned City Hall loop. You had to know exactly where to look. A panel in the tunnel wall that looked like solid concrete but was actually a false wall. James had been shown it years ago by an old. Now he used the knowledge to save us. That we slipped through. Found ourselves in a tunnel that hadn't seen regular traffic in 80 years. The air was different here. Stale, dead. No circulation except what leaked in from the active system. Our flashlights revealed a time capsule. Old tiles. Original 1904 construction. Beautiful archwork covered in decades of dust and grime. We followed this tunnel for maybe a quarter mile. It curved gently, part of the old City Hall loop that used to turn trains around at the southern terminus of the original subway. Finally, we emerged into City Hall station itself. That it was stunning. Even in the darkness, even in our terror, it was stunning. City Hall had been the crown jewel of the original IRT, built to impress. Skylights now sealed from above, ornate tilework in greens and creams. Vaulted ceilings with elaborate arches, brass fixtures now tarnished, chandeliers long since removed. It had been closed in 1945 because the platforms were too curved for modern trains. They'd catch the doors and trap passengers. But the station remained, sealed, forgotten by most. Maintained only occasionally by MTA historians. We were alone here. Safe. Hidden. We wait, James said. Give it 12 hours. Then we try to make contact. See if the system's been secured. We set up in what had been the station master's office. A small room off the main platform. Found some old chairs that were surprisingly intact. Settled in. Tried the radios. Got only static. Tried our cell phones. No signal this deep underground. We'd never had signal in the tunnels. Always relied on the MTA's radio system. We ate our lunches. We'd each brought food for our shift: sandwiches, fruit, snacks, water bottles. Maybe 1,500 calories per person. Maybe a liter of water each. Enough for the shift. Not enough to survive long term. But we wouldn't need long term. This would blow over in hours. Had to. We tried to sleep. Couldn't. The adrenaline, the fear, the sounds that echoed through the tunnel's distant screaming. Sounds of chaos carrying through the interconnected passages. Sounds that suggested the city above was dying. At 0600 hours, 6 hours after we'd sealed ourselves in City Hall, James tried the radio again. This time he got something. Fragments, other MTA workers calling for help. Dispatch not responding. Then an automated emergency broadcast. Attention all personnel. The MTA system has been suspended indefinitely. All stations are closed. Do not attempt to exit tunnels to street level. Infected individuals have entered the system. If you are trapped underground, shelter in place. Wait for National Guard extraction teams. Repeat. Shelter in place. The broadcast cut off. Repeated. Cut off again. Then nothing but static. National Guard extraction, Maria said. They're going to get us out. We just wait. But James and I looked at each other. 11 years in the tunnels for me. 15 for him. We knew something Maria didn't know yet. Something that experience taught you about the MTA, about bureaucracy, about emergency response in a system this large and complex. Nobody was coming. Not soon, maybe not ever. The subway system was 250 miles of tunnel, 472 stations. If the system was shut down, if infected were in the tunnels, if the surface was as bad as it sounded, there was no way they could secure all of it quickly. Could take days, weeks, months if the situation was truly catastrophic. We were on our own. We need a survival plan, I said. Food, water, light, safety. The extraction teams Maria started might not come. James cut her off. Might not come for a long time. We plan for weeks, months if we have to. Better to be prepared and wrong than unprepared and fucked. So we planned, took inventory of what we had. 3 flashlights with batteries that might last 24 hours total if used sparingly. 3 radios useless without someone to communicate with. Work tools, hammers, pry bars, wire cutters, wrenches. A first aid kit with basic supplies: bandages, pain relievers, antiseptic. Our work clothes and boots. 3 sandwiches. Assorted snacks. 3 water bottles. Nothing else. Water first, James said. Humans die from dehydration in 3 days. We have maybe 1 liter each. That buys us 2 days if we ration strictly. We need to find water sources. The tunnels are full of water, I said. Seepage, groundwater. It gets in through cracks, through old infrastructure. Some sections have constant dripping. The drainage sumps collect it. That water's contaminated, Maria said. Sewage, chemicals, bacteria. Contaminated water beats no water, James replied. We find the cleanest sources we can. We filter it if possible. We drink it or we die. Food, I continued. We have maybe 3 days of food between us if we ration carefully. After that, rats, James said simply. Maria looked sick. I'm not eating rats. Then you'll starve. Your choice. But there are millions of rats in this system. They're a protein source. Survivable protein if we're careful. How do you know that? Maria demanded. Because homeless people have been living in these tunnels for decades. Some of them eat rats. They survive. It's documented. This was true. The MTA had a whole department that dealt with homeless encampments in the tunnels. Some people lived down here for years. They'd developed survival strategies. Rats were a known food source. Not pleasant. Not safe. But possible. Light, James continued. We have maybe 24 hours of flashlight power. After that, we navigate by emergency lighting where it exists, and by feel and memory where it doesn't. David, you know the tunnels better than anyone. How well can you navigate without light? I thought about it. The active sections, pretty well. I've worked them so often I know the layout. The abandoned sections, less well. Some I've never been in. Some I've only seen on maps. We'll need to explore. Find safe areas, water sources, food sources, map out territories. And we do it before the batteries die. Use the light while we have it to scout. Memorize what we see. Then we can return in darkness. It was a plan. Bare bones desperate. But a plan. We'd shelter in City Hall Station. Explore outward during our waking hours. Find water and food. Wait for rescue. Survive as long as necessary. We thought it would be days. Maybe 2 weeks at most. We were trained MTA workers. We knew the tunnels. We were prepared. We could handle this. We had no idea at all what we were about to face, what we would become, what 165 days in the darkness would do to us. Day 2 May 9th we began exploring, used our flashlights while they still worked. James's suggestion, scout now while we could see, memorize the layout, then we could navigate in darkness later using memory. We moved cautiously through the tunnels, always staying together, always listening for infected. Found that the old City Hall loop connected to several other passages, the active 6-train tunnel, an abandoned spur that used to connect to the old Worth Street station, a maintenance tunnel that ran north toward Grand Central. Water mains and power conduits ran through some sections, old equipment rooms, abandoned offices, sealed passages that probably led to basements of buildings above. We found water, a section where groundwater seeped constantly through cracks in the tunnel wall, formed puddles on the tunnel floor. The water was brown with rust and sediment, smelled vaguely of minerals and mold, but it was water. We collected it in our empty bottles, let the sediments settle, drank the clearest parts we could manage. It tasted terrible, metallic, chemical, made my stomach cramp, but it was hydration. It would keep us alive. We found rat, hundreds of them, living in colonies in the walls, in piles of debris, in old equipment cabinets. They scattered when we approached, but they were there, abundant, survivable food source if we could figure out how to catch them. I'd seen other track workers deal with rats. You couldn't use traps, rats were too smart, but you could use their habits against them. They followed specific paths, had territories. If you learned their patterns, you could catch them. I started trying, used wire from my toolkit to make crude snares, set them in areas where I'd seen rats traveling, waited. Day 3 May 10th I caught my first rat. Big one, easily a pound, maybe more. NYC subway rats are massive and limited food from dropped trash had made them large. Healthy, fearless. I killed it quickly with my hammer, then had to figure out how to prepare it. No way to cook it. Fire in the tunnels would create carbon monoxide in the confined space, kill us faster than starvation. Had to eat it raw. I'd never field dressed an animal before, but I had a knife from my toolkit. I worked by flashlight, trying not to waste battery but needing to see what I was doing. Skinned the rat, gutted it. The organs came out in a mass of slippery tissue. The smell was overwhelming, but beneath was meat. Dark red meat, muscle tissue, edible protein. I cut it into small pieces, offered some to James and Maria. James took it, chewed slowly, swallowed with visible effort. Tastes like shit, he said. But it's calories. Maria refused. I just can't. You will when you're hungry enough, James said. Not unkindly, just stating fact. I ate my portion. It was exactly as bad as you'd imagine, gamey, bloody, slightly sweet in a wrong way. The texture was stringy, tough, but I got it down, felt it sit heavy in my stomach, hoped my body could process it, hoped I wouldn't get sick. We didn't get sick. Our immune systems held, the protein sustained us, we'd found a food source, terrible, disgusting, but functional. Day 4, our flashlights started dying. The batteries were draining faster than expected, probably old batteries, probably weakened by the moisture in the tunnels. We'd used them more than planned, exploring, scouting, navigating. By 1800 hours on day 4, we were down to one working flashlight. We used it only for essential tasks. Movement was done by feel now, by memory, by the dim emergency lighting that existed in some sections, battery-powered lights that might last months or years depending on the battery age. The darkness was absolute in most sections. No light at all. Your eyes adjust to low light, if given time can start to perceive shapes, changes in darkness. But in zero light, you see nothing, just blackness. Your other senses try to compensate. Hearing becomes sharper, touch becomes essential, spatial memory develops, but the psychological effect is brutal. Humans aren't meant for darkness. Our brains depend on visual input. Without it, they start to malfunction. Create input, hallucinate, fill the void with false sensations. Maria started having panic attacks on day 4. We were moving through a particularly dark section and she just stopped. Started hyperventilating. I can't see anything. Something's touching me. Nothing's touching you, James said calmly. He'd dealt with this before. New workers sometimes panicked in the tunnels. It's just your brain creating sensation. Focus on my voice. Focus on breathing, in through your nose, out through your mouth. He talked her through it, got her calm, but I could tell it was the beginning. The darkness was getting to her, getting to all of us. But Maria was newer, less experienced with tunnel work, less adapted to darkness. Day 5. James decided we needed structure, routine, something to anchor ourselves to reality in the darkness. We're going to lose track of time, he said. We're going to lose our minds if we don't establish routine. So we create a schedule, work schedule, like we're on shift. He outlined it. Wake time based on my watch. We'd use my watch as our timekeeper since it was the only one with an alarm and backlight. 600 wake up, brief meeting, assign tasks for the day, water collection, rat hunting, equipment maintenance, exploration if needed, rest periods. Sleep time at 2200. It seemed arbitrary. There was no day or night in the tunnels. But the routine helped, gave us structure, gave us purpose, kept us from just sitting in the darkness waiting to die or go insane. Day 6. The first infected came into our territory. We heard them before we sensed them otherwise. Heard the sounds, that wrong movement, that aggressive breathing, that purposeful hunt. Coming from the north, from the direction of Grand Central. We hid, turned off every light, pressed ourselves into an alcove, controlled our breathing, waited. They moved through the tunnel, maybe 5 or 6 based on the sounds, searching, looking for prey. They couldn't see well in the darkness. Whatever the infection did, it impaired vision like it impaired everything else except aggression and motor function. They were searching by sound, by smell maybe. We didn't move, didn't breathe more than necessary, didn't make a sound. They passed, continued south, disappeared into the tunnels. Gone. They're down here, Maria whispered when we were sure they'd left. They're in the tunnels. We're not safe. We're safer than the surface, James said. But yeah, not safe. Never safe. We stay alert. We stay quiet. We avoid them when possible. And when avoiding isn't possible, I asked. James patted the pry bar on his tool belt. Then we make it possible. These things are strong, but they're not smart. If we have to fight, we fight. Aim for the head. Same as every zombie movie ever made. It was the first time anyone had said zombie. That's what these were. Infected. Zombies. The living dead or whatever they were. The word made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Day 7. 1 week underground. We'd established a functioning survival routine. We had water sources mapped. Had rat colonies identified. Had safe hiding spots memorized. Had a home base in the old city hall station. Had a system for waste disposal using a dead-end tunnel section far from our living area. Had adapted to the darkness enough to move relatively confidently through known sections. We'd survived a week, with no help, no rescue, no contact with the surface. Just us and the tunnels and the rats and the infected. How long do you think we'll be down here? Maria asked during our evening meeting. James was quiet. Then, I don't know. Could be another week. Could be months. Could be that the surface is gone and we're down here permanently. That's not possible, Maria said. They'll get it under control. National Guard, military, someone. They have to. Sure, James agreed. But I heard the doubt in his voice. Heard what he wasn't saying, that maybe nobody was coming. That maybe we were on our own. That maybe this was life now. I couldn't accept that. Wouldn't accept that. We'd be rescued. Had to be. This was temporary. A crisis, it would pass. Things would go back to normal. We just had to survive until then. But as I lay in the darkness that night, trying to sleep on the hard platform floor of City Hall Station, listening to the distant echoes in the tunnels, I felt doubt. Cold doubt. What if James was right? What if this was permanent? What if we spent the rest of our lives in these tunnels? I pushed the thought away, focused on the routine, on the schedule, on surviving one more day. That's all we could do. Survive one more day, then another, until rescue came or we died trying. 1 week down, 158 days to go. Though we didn't know that yet. Didn't know how long the darkness would last, how much it would change us, how much of our humanity we'd lose. We were still hopeful, still believed in rescue, still thought this was temporary. We were wrong. Day 10 brought the first major crisis. Our last flashlight died. We were using it sparingly, maybe 15 minutes per day total, just for essential tasks like cleaning water or preparing rat meat. But the battery finally gave out. James pressed the button and got nothing. Tried again, nothing. The battery was dead. We were in complete darkness now. No artificial light at all except for the occasional emergency LED in some sections. Most of the tunnel system was pitch black. Absolute darkness. 0 photons reaching our retinas. We adapt, James said, his voice coming from the darkness beside me. Blind people live full lives. We learn to navigate without vision, use our other senses. We can do this. But it's different when you had sight and lose it versus never having it. Your brain expects visual input. When it doesn't get it, things go wrong. You start seeing things that aren't there. Phantom lights, shapes in the darkness. Your visual cortex fires randomly, creating false images. I saw lights that didn't exist. Saw movement in darkness where nothing moved. Saw faces sometimes, just for a second, then gone. My brain filling the void with false data. Maria had it worse. She started seeing things and believing they were real. Did you see that? She'd whisper, there's something over there. I can see it moving. There's nothing there, James would say. It's a hallucination. Your brain making things up. I can see it, she'd insist. We were all hallucinating. Visual hallucinations from sensory deprivation. Auditory hallucinations from the isolation and echoes. Sometimes I'd hear voices calling my name. Hear conversations in the distance. Hear my phone ringing even though my phone was dead and had been for days. Day 12. We developed a navigation system. Couldn't see, couldn't use lights. Had to move through the tunnels to gather water and hunt rats. So we created a method. I'd worked these tunnels for 11 years. Had the layout in my head. Knew the distances between landmarks. Knew which tunnels curved and which ran straight. Knew where the third rail was on each line. Some lines had it on the left, some on the right, some in the center. That knowledge became our GPS. I'd navigate by counting steps and feeling the walls. Standard pace 0.75 meters per step. Count steps to measure distance. Feel the wall surface to identify sections. Brick meant older sections. Concrete meant newer. Tile meant nearer station. Different textures meant different areas. I taught James and Maria the system. We'd practice in our known territory around City Hall. Walk to a destination with me leading, counting steps, identifying landmarks by touch. 100 steps from the south platform stairs puts us at the tunnel junction. Wall changes from brick to concrete. Third rail switches from left side to right. We're entering the 6th train tunnel heading south. It worked. Slowly we could navigate. Not as well as with light. Not as confidently. But we could move through the darkness without getting lost. Usually, day 15, we got lost anyway. We'd gone exploring, looking for new water sources, new rat colonies, new supplies. Taken a tunnel junction I thought I knew, counted steps wrong or took a wrong turn, ended up in a section I didn't recognize. No problem, I thought. Backtrack, but in darkness, with no visual landmarks. Backtracking isn't simple. The tunnels all feel the same, sound the same, smelled the same. We wandered for what felt like hours. Might have been hours. Time was hard to track. My watch said we'd been searching for 6 hours. 6 hours lost in the darkness, walking in circles maybe, or going deeper into unfamiliar territory. No way to know. Maria panicked. Started crying. We're going to die down here. Lost in the dark. Nobody will ever find our bodies. Calm down, James said. But I could hear the stress in his voice too. We were lost. Truly lost. In 250 miles of tunnel. Could be anywhere. I tried to think. Use logic. We'd been walking uphill slightly. I could feel it in my legs. Uphill meant north, probably. Most tunnels sloped. North meant toward Grand Central. If we could find Grand Central, we could orient ourselves, find our way back. We kept walking north, walking uphill, eventually found a platform. Still didn't know which station, but a platform was something. I felt along the wall, found tile work, traced the patterns by touch. Different stations had different tile designs. If I could identify the pattern, I could identify the station, that it was 33rd Street. I recognized the border pattern. We'd gone much further north than intended. But now I knew where we were, could navigate back. It took another 4 hours. We were exhausted, dehydrated, hungry, but we made it back to City Hall, back to safety, back to known territory. We don't explore that far again, James decided. We stay within our mapped area. Too dangerous to go beyond what we know, but our mapped area was limited. Maybe 2 miles of tunnel. We'd need to expand eventually, need to find more resources. But for now, we'd stay safe, stay in known territory. Day 18, I started marking the tunnels. Couldn't see the marks, but I could feel them. Used my knife to scratch symbols into the brick and concrete walls. Simple symbols I could identify by touch. Arrows pointing back toward City Hall, X marks for danger areas where we'd seen infected, circle marks for water sources, square marks for good rat hunting areas. It helped. Created a tactile map, something I could follow by touch in the darkness. Over the following days, I marked our entire territory. Created a complete tactile map. Now anyone could navigate it, even in darkness, just by following the marks. Day 20. 3 weeks underground. We'd settled into a routine. Wake at 0600, morning meeting plan, the day's tasks. Water collection usually took 2 hours. Walking to known seepage points. Collecting drips in containers. Letting sediment settle. Rat hunting, I was getting good at it. Could catch 2 or 3 rats per day. Equipment, maintenance, keeping our tools functional. Keeping ourselves clean as possible with the limited water. Rest period, just sitting, talking, trying to maintain human connection. Evening meetings, discuss the day, plan tomorrow. Sleep at 2200. The routine kept us sane, kept us human, kept us from just sitting in the darkness waiting to die. But we were changing, adapting. Our senses were shifting. Without vision, our hearing and touch became primary. I could hear things I'd never noticed before. Could hear the difference between infected movement and rat movement from 100 meters away. Could hear water dripping from different distances and identify which water source it was by the echo pattern. Touch was even more important. We navigated by touch, identified objects by touch, communicated by touch in situations where silence was necessary. I developed a sensitivity I'd never had before. Could feel air currents that indicated passage entrances. Could feel temperature changes that meant we were near a vent shaft or service tunnel. Could feel vibrations in the rail that told me a maintenance train was coming even though the system was supposed to be shut down. We were adapting to the darkness, becoming creatures of it, losing our dependence on vision, developing new senses. But there was a cost. We were losing other things. Memories were fading. I couldn't remember what my apartment looked like. Couldn't remember my girlfriend's face. Clearly we'd broken up 2 years ago, but I used to remember her features. Now it was blurry. Couldn't remember colors accurately. The visual parts of my brain were being reassigned, used for other processing since they weren't getting visual input. We were forgetting the surface world, forgetting daylight, forgetting what it felt like to see, becoming tunnel creatures, adapted to darkness, optimized for survival underground. Day 25, we heard vehicles on the surface, heavy vehicles, tanks maybe, military equipment. The rumble carried down through the concrete and steel, vibrated through the tunnel walls. We could feel it more than hear it. They're fighting up there, James said. Military versus infected maybe, or trying to evacuate, or something. Should we try to make contact? Maria asked. Try to get their attention. How? We're 100 feet underground, in sealed tunnels. Even if we made noise, they wouldn't hear us through all this concrete and steel. There are ventilation shafts, I said. Emergency exits, ways to reach the surface, that we've already explored, that we found sealed or collapsed or too dangerous with infected presence. He was right. We'd tried early on. Every exit we'd found was either blocked or too dangerous. The infected congregated near exits, near any opening to the tunnels. We'd be killed trying to reach the surface. We wait, James said. We keep surviving. Eventually this ends. Eventually someone will come for us. But his voice lacked conviction. He was saying what we needed to hear, what we wanted to believe, but I don't think he believed it anymore. Don't think any of us did. Day 30, 1 month underground. Maria stopped eating, not dramatically, not announcing it, just started refusing food when I offered her rat meat. I'm not hungry, she'd say, or I'll eat later. But later never came. I noticed her losing weight, could feel it when we huddled together for warmth on cold nights, could feel her ribs becoming more prominent, her arms getting thinner. Maria, you need to eat, I said. You're starving yourself. I can't eat rats anymore, she said. I just can't. The taste, the texture, knowing what it is. I can't. You'll die if you don't eat. Maybe that's better than this. James intervened, tried to talk to her, tried to make her understand that suicide by starvation wasn't the answer, that we needed to survive, that rescue would come, that giving up meant the infected one. She ate a little, enough to keep going, but I could tell she was fading. The isolation, the darkness, the horror of our situation, it was breaking her. She wasn't adapting like James and I were. She was deteriorating. Day 35, we found other survivors. Or they found us. We were hunting rats in a section of the 4-train tunnel when we heard voices. Human voices. Speaking Spanish. Multiple people. James called out in Spanish. He was fluent. Had grown up in a Dominican neighborhood. Hello, who's there? We're MTA workers. Not infected. Don't shoot. Silence. Then a response. Also in Spanish. How many are you? 3. We've been down here since the outbreak. We're friendly. Just surviving. Come forward slowly. Hands visible. If you're infected, we'll know. We moved toward the voices, following their directions, eventually encountered them, couldn't see them in the darkness, but could sense them, could hear their breathing, could smell them. Humans have a distinct smell, especially after living in close quarters without bathing. There were 5 of them, 3 men, 2 women. They'd been living in an abandoned station near Borough Hall, had been down here even longer than us. They were maintenance workers who'd been doing overnight work when the outbreak started. They'd sealed themselves in immediately, had survived on emergency supplies stored in the station, were now running low, were expanding their territory, looking for food and water. We shared information, compared notes on survival techniques. They'd figured out rat hunting independently, had found good water sources near Brooklyn Bridge, had mapped several miles of tunnel in their area, had encountered infected frequently. The Brooklyn tunnels seemed to have higher infected density for some reason. Have you seen rescue teams? James asked. Military. Anyone searching the tunnels? We saw some on day 10, one of the men said. National Guard. They were clearing infected from stations. But they left. Haven't seen anyone since. I think they gave up. Too many infected, too many tunnels, too dangerous. So nobody's coming, Maria said flatly. Nobody's coming, the man confirmed. We're on our own, probably for a long time. We parted ways after sharing some rat meat and water with them. They headed back to their territory. We returned to ours. But the encounter changed something. We'd thought we were alone, thought we were the only ones surviving in the tunnels. Now we knew there were others, maybe many others, people living in the darkness, adapting, surviving, forming communities in the underground. It was simultaneously comforting and terrifying. Comforting because we weren't alone. Terrifying because if there were survivors, there must be established territories, competition for resources, maybe conflict. The tunnels weren't just a shelter. They were becoming a society. A civilization, an underground world separate from the surface. Day 40. James proposed we make contact with the other survivors regularly, establish trade, share information, create a tunnel community. We're stronger together, he argued. We can share territory, share resources, warn each other about infected movements, maybe even work together to secure more areas. Maria disagreed. More people means more competition for food and water, means more noise attracting infected, means potential conflict. It also means more eyes watching for danger, James countered. Means people to help if we get injured. Means human contact. We're going crazy from isolation. We need social interaction. I sided with James. The isolation was crushing. The darkness was crushing. Having other people, even occasionally, would help, would keep us human. We made contact with the Borough Hall group weekly after that. Met at a midpoint between our territories. Shared resources, shared information, shared stories and conversation. It helped. Gave us something to look forward to. Reminded us we were still human, still part of a community. even if that community was scattered survivors in flooded tunnels. Day 45, we discovered farming. Sort of. I noticed mushrooms growing on a section of tunnel wall, large mushrooms, growing on the moisture and organic matter that accumulated in certain spots. I recognized them oyster mushrooms, edible. I'd seen them in grocery stores. I harvested them, showed them to James. Food source, natural, growing wild down here. We examined them carefully. They looked like oyster mushrooms. Smelled right, but eating wild mushrooms is risky. Many species are poisonous. Look similar to edible species. James made the decision. I'll try them. Small amount. We wait 24 hours. If I get sick, we know they're poisonous. If I'm fine, they're safe. He ate a small piece. We waited. 24 hours passed. He was fine. The mushrooms were safe. We had a new food source. Not enough to replace rat meat entirely, but enough to supplement, to add variety, to give us vitamins and nutrients we weren't getting from rat meat alone. I started cultivating them. Found more colonies in different tunnel sections, started spreading spores to new locations, creating mushroom farms in spots with good moisture and organic material. Within a week, we had multiple mushroom colonies producing food regularly. That felt like progress, like we were creating something instead of just consuming, like we were adapting to long-term survival instead of just waiting for rescue. Day 50, we stopped talking about rescue, stopped mentioning it in our meetings, stopped planning for it. We were here. This was life. This was permanent. We shifted our mindset, started thinking long-term, started planning for years in the tunnels instead of weeks, started thinking about what we needed for sustainable survival. We needed more reliable food sources, more diversity beyond rats and mushrooms. We needed better water filtration. We needed medical supplies for when someone got injured or sick. We needed weapons better than pry bars and hammers. We needed more territory, more resources, more security. We were building a life in the tunnels, a civilization, adapting completely to this underground world. Day 55. Infected started falling into the tunnels, not entering through normal entrances, falling through grates and ventilation shafts and collapsed sections, falling and landing on the tracks, usually injured from the fall, but still dangerous, still infected, still hunting. We'd hear the impact, the crash of a body hitting concrete or steel, then the sound, the groaning, the movement. Sometimes they'd die from the fall, sometimes they'd be too injured to move, but sometimes they'd survive and start hunting immediately. We had to change our routine, add check for fall victims to our daily tasks, listen for impacts, investigate when safe, eliminate infected that made it down before they spread too far into the tunnels. I killed my first infected on day 57. Found one that had fallen through a ventilation shaft, had broken both legs in the fall, was dragging itself along the tunnel floor, making horrible sounds, leaving a trail of fluids. I approached with my pry bar. The infected sensed me, started dragging faster, trying to attack, but it couldn't stand, couldn't chase. I hit it in the head. First hit didn't kill it, second hit cracked the skull, third hit stopped it moving, fourth hit to be sure. Then I had to drag the body to a disposal area. We'd established body dumps in dead-end tunnels, places we never went, places where bodies could rot without affecting our living areas. The smell was horrific but necessary. Killing the infected was surprisingly easy, physically easy. They were dangerous in groups, dangerous if they caught you, dangerous if you weren't prepared, but one-on-one with preparation and the right tools, they were manageable. Just aim for the head, hit hard, don't hesitate. The psychological cost was higher. That had been a person, now it was a corpse I'd created. Now I was a killer, even though they were already dead in a meaningful sense, even though it was self-defense. It changed something, made me realize I was capable of killing, that the situation had pushed me to a place where taking a life was just another task, like hunting rats, like collecting water. I was becoming someone else, something else, a creature adapted to survive in the darkness by any means necessary. Day 60, 2 months underground. Maria had a complete breakdown. We were in our usual evening meeting when she just started screaming, not in response to anything, just started screaming, crying, hitting the walls. I can't do this anymore. I can't. I want to see the sun. I want to see light. I want out. I want out. James and I tried to calm her, tried to restrain her before she hurt herself, but she fought us, scratched, bit, completely feral with panic and despair. We're going to die down here, she screamed. We're never getting out. This is forever. We're going to rot in the darkness like rats, like the infected. We're already dead. We're already dead. She tried to run, into the darkness, into the tunnels. We caught her, held her, let her cry, let her scream until her voice gave out, let her exhaust herself. When she finally stopped, when she was just sobbing quietly in our arms, James spoke. "Maria, I know this is hard. I know this seems impossible, but we're surviving. We're alive. That's something. That's everything." "What's the point?" she whispered. "What's the point of surviving like this?" "Because we're human," James said. "Because giving up means they win. Because somewhere, somehow, life will continue, and we're going to be part of it." I wanted to believe him, wanted to believe there was a point, but in the darkness, after 2 months of eating rats and drinking contaminated water and slowly losing our minds, it was hard to see the point, hard to understand why we were fighting so hard just to exist in misery, but we kept going, because stopping meant dying, and we weren't ready to die yet, weren't ready to give up, not yet. Day 65. James got injured, bad injury. We were hunting rats in a flooded section when he slipped on the wet concrete, fell hard. I heard the snap, heard him scream, knew immediately it was serious. I felt his leg in the darkness, found the break, his right tibia had snapped, could feel the bone fragments through the skin. Not a compound fracture, the bone hadn't broken through the skin, but bad, very bad. "Can you move?" I asked. "Fuck," he gasped. Fuck, no, can't put weight on it." Maria and I supported him, got him back to City Hall Station, laid him on the platform. Now we had to figure out how to treat a broken leg with no medical supplies beyond a basic first aid kit. In the darkness, in a contaminated environment, with no way to get professional help. I'd done first aid training as part of MTA certification, knew the basics, stabilize the injury, prevent infection, manage pain, keep the patient comfortable. I used our remaining first aid supplies, gave James pain medication over-the-counter stuff. Not strong, but something. Used strips of fabric torn from our clothes to create a splint. Used metal rods from old signal equipment as splint supports. Wrapped everything as tightly as I could without cutting off circulation. It wasn't good medical care. It was barely adequate, but it was all we could do. James was incapacitated, couldn't walk, couldn't hunt, couldn't collect water, couldn't do anything except lie on the platform in pain. Maria and I now had to do everything. All the hunting, all the water collection, all the security checks. With James down, we'd lost a third of our capability. We're more vulnerable, more strained. And if the injury became infected, James would die. Simple as that. No antibiotics, no surgical intervention, just death from sepsis in the darkness. Day 70. James developed a fever. The injury was infected. I could feel the heat radiating from his leg even in the darkness. Could smell the infection, sweet, rotten, wrong. "I'm dying," James said. Not panicked, just stating fact. "Sepsis. Give it a few days, maybe a week, then I'm dead." "Don't talk like that," Maria said. "We'll figure something out." "There's nothing to figure out," James said. "No medicine down here. No doctors. No treatment. It's infected and infections kill. I'm dead. Just a matter of time." I didn't want to accept it. James was our leader, our most experienced member, the one who'd kept us alive this long. Without him, Maria and I would struggle, might not survive, but he was right. The infection was spreading. The fever was getting worse. Without antibiotics, without medical intervention, he'd die. Within days. Day 73, James was delirious. Fever over 104 degrees based on how hot his skin felt. Talking nonsense. Seeing things that weren't there. Calling out for people who weren't present. Not Maria and I took turns sitting with him, giving him water when he could drink, trying to keep him comfortable, knowing there was nothing else we could do. Just wait for the end. Day 75. James died. Early morning, around 0400 hours based on my watch. His breathing had been getting slower, shallower. Then it just stopped. He went quiet, went still. I checked for a pulse. Nothing. He was gone. Maria and I sat with his body in the darkness, crying. Neither of us spoke. What was there to say? James had been right. The infection had killed him, and now we were 2 instead of 3. Alone in the darkness with one less person keeping us human. We couldn't keep his body. No way to preserve it. The rats would come. The smell would attract infected. We had to dispose of it. I dragged James's body to our disposal tunnel, the place where we put infected corpses, put my friend's body with the monsters. Because that's what survival required. No dignity, no proper burial, just disposal. I said a few words. Some prayer I half remembered from childhood. Asked whatever God might exist to take care of James, to give him peace, to remember that he'd tried, that he'd survived as long as he could. that he'd kept to other people alive through his experience and leadership. Then, I left his body in the darkness and returned to Maria. Now we were just two. In 250 miles of tunnel, with 90 days of darkness already behind us, and no idea how many more ahead. Day 76. Maria and I sat in the darkness and had the conversation we'd been avoiding. "It's just us now," Maria said. Her voice was flat, empty. "James is dead. We're alone." "We're not alone," I said, though I knew what she meant. "We have the Burrow group. We have each other. For how long? How long before one of us gets injured, gets infected, starves, goes crazy? How long before I'm sitting here alone, or you're sitting here alone? We survive," I said. "That's all we can do. Survive one more day. What's the point?" I didn't have a good answer. James had been able to articulate hope, purpose, reason. I couldn't. I just knew that stopping meant dying, and some survival instinct wouldn't let me stop, wouldn't let me give up, even when giving up seemed rational. "Because we're still human," I finally said. "Because the alternative is becoming like them, like the infected. And I refuse. I refuse to stop being human." "We're not human anymore," Maria said. "We live in the dark. We eat rats. We drink filthy water. We've forgotten what the sun looks like. What are we if not human? What have we become?" "Survivors," I said. "We're survivors. And that counts for something," but I wasn't sure I believed it. Wasn't sure survival alone was worth this. Worth living like animals in the darkness. Worth forgetting everything that had made us human: comfort, society, light, hope. Day 80. Maria stopped talking to me. Not because of anger, not because of conflict. She just stopped. Would respond if I asked direct questions, but wouldn't initiate conversation, wouldn't share thoughts, just existed. Silent, moving through the routine mechanically. I tried to engage her, tried to get her to talk, share feelings, process James's death, process our situation, but she was shut down, withdrawn into herself, building walls that I couldn't penetrate. I was losing her, just like we'd lost James. Not to physical death, to psychological death, to the crushing weight of isolation and darkness and hopelessness. Day 85. I woke up and Maria was gone. I called for her, searched our immediate area, found nothing. She'd left while I slept, taken nothing, just walked into the darkness, disappeared. I searched for her, called her name, moved through our territory, found nothing. No sign, no trace, no Maria. She was gone, lost in the tunnels, maybe deliberately lost, maybe suicidal, maybe just needed to be alone. I didn't know, would never know. I searched for 3 days, covered miles of tunnel, called her name until my voice was raw, found nothing. She was gone, vanished into 250 miles of labyrinth. Could be anywhere, could be dead, could be alive somewhere, alone, surviving or dying. I had to accept it, had to stop searching, had to return to my routine, because if I didn't, I'd die too. And then there'd be nobody, nobody left from our group. All 3 of us gone into the darkness. Day 88. I was alone, completely alone for the first time in 88 days. James was dead. Maria was gone. The Burrow Hall group was miles away. I was by myself in the darkness, in the silence, in the crushing isolation. I'd been alone before in my life, had lived alone, had enjoyed solitude, but this was different. This was absolute isolation. No possibility of human contact unless I chose to seek it. No accidental encounters, no random interactions, just me and the darkness and the rats and the infected. The silence was devastating. I started talking to myself. Full conversations. "David, you need to check the water collection today." "Yes, good idea. Should also hunt rats." "Running low on food." "Agreed." After that, check the tunnel marks. Make sure they're still clear. I knew it was crazy. Knew talking to myself was a bad sign, but it was the only human voice I'd hear. The only conversation I'd have. Without it, I'd go silent. And silence in isolation meant psychological death, meant losing language, losing the ability to process thoughts verbally, losing a fundamental part of human cognition. Day 90. 3 months underground, I had my first complete breakdown. I was hunting rats. Routine task, something I'd done hundreds of times. Caught a rat, killed it, started preparing it, and something snapped. I started crying. Not sad crying, hysterical crying, sobbing, screaming. Hit the walls with my fists until they bled, screamed until my throat was raw. I can't do this anymore. I can't live like this. Eating rats in the darkness. Alone, always alone. I want out. I want to see the sun. I want to see another human face. I want to hear another voice. I want out. Nobody heard me. Nobody came, nobody cared. I was alone, completely alone, and the darkness absorbed my screams and gave nothing back. I collapsed, lay on the tunnel floor, felt the cold concrete, the moisture, the grime, thought about the third rail, about just reaching out, grabbing it. 600 volts, instant death, no more suffering, no more isolation, no more being a tunnel creature slowly losing my humanity, but I didn't do it. Some survival instinct was too strong. Even when I wanted to die, wanted to end it, wanted the pain to stop, I couldn't make myself do it. Couldn't make myself grab that rail, couldn't make myself stop fighting. I got up, finished preparing the rat, ate it, drank water, continued my routine, because that's all I could do. Continue, survive. One more day. Day 95. I found Maria's body. I was exploring a section I rarely visited when I smelled it. That smell, death, decomposition, sweet and rotten and wrong. I followed the smell, found her. She'd wedged herself into a narrow maintenance passage, sat down against the wall, and stopped, just stopped eating, drinking, moving, let herself die. I couldn't see her body too dark, but I could feel it, could feel the cold flesh, the wrong texture, the empty stillness of death. She'd given up, chosen this, chosen to stop fighting, chosen death over continuing to survive in the darkness. I understood. God help me, I understood. The isolation was crushing, the darkness was crushing, the knowledge that this was forever, that there was no rescue, no escape, no hope. It was too much. Some people couldn't carry that weight, couldn't keep fighting when there was no reason to fight except fighting itself. Maria had put down that weight, had chosen peace, had chosen rest, and I couldn't judge her for it, couldn't even be angry, just sad. Sad that the darkness had won, that she'd lost her battle, that I was truly alone now. I left her body where it was, couldn't move it, couldn't face dragging another friend to the disposal tunnel. Let her rest where she'd chosen, let the darkness have her. Now I was the last one, the only one left from our original group. James dead from infection, Maria dead from giving up, and me, still alive, still surviving, still fighting for reasons I couldn't articulate anymore. Day 100, I stopped keeping detailed track of days, stopped caring about dates, stopped thinking in terms of calendar time. I just marked days in my journal with numbers. Day 100, day 101, day 102. Numbers without meaning, without context, just marks of survival, of continuing to exist. The isolation was changing me in ways I couldn't fully understand. I'd forgotten how to have normal conversations. When I talked to myself, which was constantly, now I spoke in fragments, incomplete sentences, like my language centers were degrading from lack of social use. Water, need water. Collection point, South Tunnel. Move. That's how I talked now. Short-clipped, efficient, like language was effort, like full sentences were unnecessary, and maybe they were. Nobody to hear them, nobody to understand them, just me. And I knew what I meant even when I didn't fully articulate it. I'd forgotten what other people looked like, couldn't remember faces anymore. Not my parents, not friends, not co-workers, not even James and Maria. Clearly, the visual parts of my brain were being reassigned, used for other processing. I was losing the ability to visualize, to imagine images, to remember what the visual world looked like. I was becoming something adapted specifically to this environment, to darkness, to isolation, to survival in tunnels, something that wasn't quite human anymore, not infected, but not normal either, something between, something new. Day 110, I encountered the tunnel hunters, the predators Maria and I had heard about from the Borough Hall group. I was in an unfamiliar section, exploring for new resources, when I heard them, multiple people, moving with purpose, speaking quietly, hunting. Not hunting infected, hunting people, hunting survivors like me. I hid, pressed myself into an alcove, controlled my breathing, became part of the darkness, listened, check that passage, thought I heard something, probably rats. Check anyway. Last group we found had supplies, good tools. We need tools. They were scavengers, predators, taking from other survivors by force, killing if necessary, surviving by preying on their own kind. I stayed hidden until they passed, until I was sure they were gone, then moved quickly back to my territory, back to safety. I realized something important. I was alone, but I wasn't safe. There were threats beyond infected, human threats, people who'd adapted to the darkness by becoming predators, who'd lost their humanity in a different way than I had. I needed to be more careful, more vigilant, more paranoid, trust nobody, avoid everyone, survive by being invisible, by being a ghost in the tunnels. Day 1. In 4 months underground, I found a new section of tunnel I'd never explored. A maintenance passage that led to what looked like an old civil defense shelter, built during Cold War, sealed. Forgotten. I broke the seal, opened the door, found supplies inside, old supplies, civil defense rations from the 1960s, water purification tablets, medical supplies, blankets, tools, a treasure trove. Most of the rations were spoiled, 60+ years old, but some items were still good. The water purification tablets work there, basically just chemicals, don't really expire. The medical supplies included antibiotics expired but possibly still effective. The tools were functional. The blankets were moth-eaten but usable. I moved my base here. Abandoned City Hall Station. This shelter was better, more secure, more supplies, more defensible, more isolated. That I set up properly, created a living space, organized supplies, established routines, made this place my home, my fortress, my sanctuary in the darkness. For the first time since day 1, I felt like I had more than just survival. I had comfort, security, resources. This place gave me hope. Not hope for rescue, not hope for escape, but hope for sustainable survival, for long-term existence in the tunnels. Day 130, I realized I was no longer thinking about the surface, wasn't wondering what was happening up there, wasn't planning for rescue, wasn't dreaming of daylight. I was tunnel people now, fully adapted, fully committed. This was my world, the only world. The surface was myth, memory, something that existed in a past life but had no reality anymore. I thought in tunnel terms, navigated by tunnel markers, hunted by tunnel techniques, thought of time in terms of sleep cycles, not days, thought of space in terms of sections and passages, not streets and buildings. I was no longer David Chen, former MTA worker temporarily sheltering underground. I was David Chen, tunnel dweller, permanent resident of the underground, a creature of darkness who'd forgotten light. Day 140, I started modifying my shelter, making improvements, creating long-term infrastructure. I established a proper mushroom farm, found the best locations, cultivated multiple species, created a sustainable food source beyond just rat meat. Not enough to live on entirely, but enough to supplement significantly. I created a water filtration system using materials from the shelter, layers of cloth and sand and charcoal. It didn't purify completely, but it made the tunnel water safer, less risk of disease. I organized my tools, created specific areas for specific functions, sleeping area, food preparation area, equipment maintenance area, water storage area, made my shelter organized, functional, livable. I was building a life, a real life, sustainable long-term existence, not just surviving day to day, actually living, in my own strange, dark, isolated way. Day 150, I encountered another lone survivor, found them in a section near my territory. They'd been watching me, observing, trying to determine if I was dangerous. We didn't speak at first, just observed each other from a distance in the darkness, two feral things sizing each other up. Finally, they spoke, a woman's voice. "How long have you been down here?" 150 days, I said. My voice was rough. I hadn't spoken to another human in 55 days. "You, since day 1, I was platform staff. Got trapped when they sealed the stations. You alone?" "Yeah. Started with others. They died, gave up, left. Now it's just me." We talked for a while, compared survival techniques, shared information about tunnel sections, warned each other about danger areas. "There's a community forming," she said. "Tunnel dwellers, people who've adapted, who aren't going up anymore, who've made this permanent. You interested?" "Maybe," I said. "We're South Ferry area, about 30 people now. We trade, share resources, watch out for each other. It's not much, but it's better than being alone." "I'll think about it," I said. She left, disappeared into the darkness, left me with something I hadn't felt in a long time, curiosity, interest, maybe even hope. There were others like me, people who'd adapted, who'd survived, who'd made the tunnels their home, a community, a culture, a civilization in the darkness. Maybe I wasn't alone, maybe I was part of something, maybe there was a future beyond just existing. Day 155, I made my way to South Ferry, found the community, and it was real. About 30 people living in a sealed section near the old South Ferry station. They'd established territory, created rules, organized supply collection, set up defenses, built a functioning underground society. They welcomed me cautiously. Wanted to know my skills, my resources, my intentions. I told them about my MTA experience, my tunnel knowledge, my survival techniques, my food cultivation methods. They were impressed, offered me a place in their community, a role, a purpose beyond just individual survival. But I couldn't stay, couldn't adapt to group living after so long alone, couldn't handle the social interaction, the noise, the constant presence of other people. My brain had rewired itself for isolation, for solitude. I couldn't undo that. I stayed for 3 days, traded supplies, shared knowledge, learned their systems, then left, back to my shelter, back to solitude, back to the isolation that had become comfortable, natural, necessary. They understood, told me I was welcome back anytime, that I could trade with them regularly, that I was part of the tunnel community even if I lived separately. I accepted. It was enough. Connection without constant interaction, society without invasion of my space, community on my terms. Day 160, I realized I'd been underground for over 5 months, 160 days, nearly half a year, living in darkness, eating rats and mushrooms, drinking filtered tunnel water, existing in isolation broken only by occasional contact with other tunnel dwellers. And I was okay, not happy, not thriving, but okay, surviving, functioning, adapted to this life in ways I couldn't have imagined on day one. I'd lost things, lost my connection to the surface world, lost normal social skills, lost the ability to visualize, lost the expectation of rescue, lost hope for a return to normal life. But I'd gained things too, gained survival skills, gained tunnel knowledge, gained self-sufficiency, gained the ability to exist in isolation without breaking completely, gained a strange peace with my situation. I was tunnel people, for better or worse, and I'd accepted it. Day 165, I saw daylight for the first time in 165 days. I wasn't looking for it, wasn't trying to escape. I was exploring a collapsed section far from my usual territory when I saw it. Light, real light, sunlight, streaming, through a gap in the rubble, away to the surface. I should have been excited, should have rushed toward it, should have climbed out immediately, escaped the tunnels, returned to the surface, found other survivors, rejoined civilization. But I stood there, in the darkness, staring at the light, and I felt fear, fear of the light, fear of the surface, fear of leaving the tunnels. The darkness had become home, the isolation had become comfort, the tunnels had become my world, and the thought of leaving terrified me. I stood at that boundary between darkness and light for an hour, maybe more, debating. Part of me wanted to climb out, wanted to see the sun, wanted to be on the surface again, but a larger part, the part that had adapted, that had become tunnel people, didn't want to leave, didn't want to face the light, didn't want to return to a world I no longer belonged to. Finally, curiosity won, or maybe obligation, or maybe just a biological imperative to move toward light even when your brain is telling you to stay in darkness. I climbed, through the rubble, through the gap, up toward the light, emerged onto a New York City street. For the first time in 165 days, 5.5 months, nearly half a year, the light hit me like a physical blow, blinded me. Pain exploded through my eyes. Photophobia. My eyes had adapted so completely to darkness that normal daylight was agony. I collapsed, covered my eyes, screamed from the pain, couldn't see, couldn't open my eyes. The light was too much, too intense, unbearable. Someone found me. National Guard patrol. They'd been sweeping the city, looking for survivors, trying to rebuild. Found a man emerging from a subway tunnel, filthy beyond recognition, screaming about light, covering his eyes, barely human. They took me, brought me to a survivor settlement, medical treatment, therapy, reintegration into surface society, but I couldn't adapt back. 5.5 months in darkness had changed me too completely. My eyes wouldn't adjust to light, not quickly, maybe not ever. My social skills were gone, couldn't hold conversations, couldn't tolerate crowds, couldn't function in groups. My diet couldn't handle normal food. My digestive system had adapted to rat meat and mushrooms, rejected cooked meals, made me sick, and psychologically, I was broken in a specific way. The surface felt wrong, too open, too bright, too loud, too much stimulus. I needed darkness, needed silence, needed the tunnels. After 3 weeks, I asked to go back underground, back to the tunnels, back to darkness. They thought I was insane, tried to talk me out of it, offered more therapy, more support, more time to adjust, but I didn't want to adjust. I wanted to go home, and home was underground, in the darkness, In the tunnels they let me go eventually, gave me supplies, escorted me to a subway entrance, watched me descend back into the darkness. Back to the tunnels, back to isolation, back to being tunnel people, permanently now, forever. I've been underground for over a year now, still alive, still surviving, still tunnel people. I come up occasionally, at night, when it's dark and my eyes can handle it, trade with the settlement, get supplies, share information about tunnel conditions. Then I go back down, back to my shelter, back to my darkness, back to my isolation. Other tunnel dwellers do the same. We're a permanent underground population now, maybe 50 of us, maybe more, people who couldn't adapt back to surface life, who'd been underground too long, who'd become something else. We're not infected, not dangerous, just different, adapted to darkness, to isolation, to underground existence. We help the surface sometimes share knowledge about infrastructure, about the tunnel system, about resources underground. But we can't live up there, won't live up there. We're tunnel people, and the tunnels are our home, forever. I survived 165 days of the zombie apocalypse underground in the New York subway system, lost my 2 companions, lost my humanity in some ways, gained a strange new existence in others. I'm alive, I'm functioning, I have a life of sorts, in the darkness, in the tunnels, in isolation. It's not the life I had before, not the life I wanted, but it's the life I have, the life I've adapted to, the life I can live. I'm David Chen. I was an MTA track worker, now I'm tunnel people, living in the darkness beneath New York City, surviving, existing, being. This is my life now, this is my world, this is my home, the darkness, the tunnels, the isolation, forever. And I've made my peace with that, because peace is all we can hope for in a world that ended, in a life that changed, in an existence that adapted. I survived. That's what matters. I survived, in my own way, on my own terms, and I'm still here, still alive, still existing. In the darkness, always in the darkness, forever. If you made it through this entire story, you understand something about isolation, about adaptation, about what happens to humans when we're pushed beyond our limits, about how we change, about how we become something else. I spent 165 days in complete darkness underground, lost everything I was, became something new, something adapted to survive in tunnels, something that can't go back. The tunnels are still there, beneath New York, beneath every city, 250 miles of darkness, and people live there now, permanently. Tunnel people, a new civilization in the underground. We survived the apocalypse, but we didn't survive unchanged. We adapted, evolved, became something that belongs in darkness, and we're still here, still surviving, still existing, in our own way, in our own world, in our own darkness. Thanks for listening, thanks for understanding, thanks for witnessing what 165 days underground really means. Stay in the light, stay on the surface, and remember there are people in the tunnels always living in darkness, surviving, existing, being. We're down here forever, and we're okay with that, because it's home. The darkness is home, always will be, forever.